Welcome back. It is the Arvo Flow Sports Hour here on Flow FM, and it's time to check in with Eddie Dadds. He's from scplaybook.com.au, appearing on his regular segment to talk all about North American sport and the weird world of sports for that matter. Not much going on in the continent for us to chat about today, though. Good to be with you, Eddie Dadds.
It's lovely to be here, Ellis. It's been a bit of we had a week off. There was no NBA the last couple of weeks, so I've had no idea what to do with myself over the last few weeks without any NBA on. But it's good that's finally back in town. We've got the footy code coming up in Australia. It's a very exciting time of the year.
Well, it's a fitting time for you to be leaving the continent there, Eddie. As you say, not a whole lot going on, but it's all ramping up back home in Australia. And speaking of Australia, the Australian manager, Ange Postecoglou, making forays into Europe like no one else is or has done before. He's just notched up another trophy with Celtic, the Viaplay Cup, Eddie, beating Rangers no less, the old rival, 2-1 in the end, and they just can't get enough of Ange in Scotland. I love this story for what it is, Eddie, which is just a story of someone that's completely flown under the radar their entire career outside of Australia. Finally, someone takes a chance on him, a big team over in Europe, and when you compare what the fanfare was like when he was first announced to what it's like now, it is just a tale of two different worlds, isn't it?
This is, Alice, when you said this through, I really thought we could spend the whole of this segment talking about Ange because, like you say, I think he's flying under the radar unbelievably much in Australia. I know we don't tend to give soccer that much of the time of day in Australia, but we need to start recognising what Ange Postecoglou is doing over there for Celtic. As you said, he's won his third trophy with Celtic in 2 seasons. He's won the League Cup twice and the Scottish Premiership as well in less than 2 full seasons at Celtic. Like you say, the original fan reaction when he was hired was, I think, one of disbelief that an Australian could possibly be good enough to manage one of the bigger teams in the United Kingdom at least. He's obviously a fantastic coach. I wanted to ask you, I wanted to get your thoughts on this. Is he the best coach of any sport in Australia right now?
I'm not sure I could really answer that, Eddie. I mean, any sport, I don't know. You could make various arguments there, but certainly in terms of an Australian identity being embedded overseas, I don't think anyone's really at a coaching level gone on and done what he's done or will replicate what he's done for some years.
Indeed. It is amazing. He's definitely the best Australian football coach in the world. I wanted to ask you as well, when I was reading up online, it seems that he's kind of constantly being linked to Premier League teams. It sounds like, Leeds United, Brighton, Hove Albion, Wolves, Everton, all these jobs he's being linked to down south away from Scotland. What do you think? Is he going to make a move away anytime soon?
Well, the complication here, Eddie, is that with Ange Postecoglou, it's all about process. And in leagues like the English Premier League, there's an awful lot of pressure on teams to accumulate results from the get-go. And we know that Ange, he got going pretty quickly in Scotland in the end, but there were some indications early on that it would take some time. You feel as though in the Premier League where it won't be a case of Celtic having an easy game every second sort of week, that's going to be a lot harder to achieve with the process that he always tries to unravel whenever he takes on a new job. He's very unwavering in his belief that the players need to understand exactly what he wants before there can be any pressure or expectation to get results. So it's going to have to be a case of him going to a big club to start the season off rather than during a season, I think. And we've seen now that that talk is slowly starting to die down. But you do never know. When a big club comes at you, Eddie, how can you say no, right?
Oh, indeed. Ellis, I would love it from a fairy tale perspective if Ange did go to Leeds United. Obviously, the Harry Kewell and Mark Viduka lineage at Leeds, it would be a fitting sort of cap on that Australian era at Leeds if Ange was to become the manager there. But yeah, like you say, I think he's someone who strikes me as is better fitted to a sort of smaller league where he can afford to build and put in roots and take time to develop these players. But yeah, what an amazing story, and I hope he starts to get some more recognition in the mainstream media in Australia.
I think he's on his way there, Eddie, and if he wins the Scottish Premiership, which he should do at this point in time, and can put the Scottish Cup in the bag as well later on this season, then it is another flawless season from Celtic, really, and you never know what happens from then on. We better move on. Let's talk about this massive boxing event that's taken place in recent hours. It's been all about the fact that the competitor to Tommy Fury, Jake Paul, is initially, his roots are YouTube rather than the ring, and it's really sort of given birth to this whole conversation about whether people can sort of come out of nowhere and challenge boxers at their bread and butter. In the end, he lost, but Tommy Fury might have liked it to have been a little easier given how confident he was going into this fight, Eddie.
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken about this a little bit on this show previously, Alice, but this appears to be the way that boxing is headed as a sport. It doesn't feel like two natural boxers can pull in the sort of TV audiences and pay-per-view money that boxing needs. So they're sort of turning down this celebrity fight route. Tommy Fury, obviously a professional boxer in name. He's also a bit of a reality television personality too. He starred on Love Island, done that sort of thing. He's the younger half-brother of Tyson Fury, who actually is a real-life boxer. But yeah, I think, what I took out of the fight, honestly, Alice, was that Jake Paul was actually not a bad fighter. He clearly was able to stick with Tommy Fury. Tommy Fury obviously has way more years of experience on him. But yeah, it's an interesting place that boxing is in as a sport, where I feel like this is really the only way that they can succeed moving forward, because there isn't the likes of a Mike Tyson or Muhammad Ali or any of those big names. No one, if I asked you, do you know a boxer? I don't know if you'd be able to answer it, but I would barely be able to answer it. I don't know many boxers at all. How do you see the sport sort of shaping up in the next few years?
I think you're absolutely right. It's all about sensationalizing things as much as we can. And these YouTube icons, Eddie, I mean, you might have seen the footage of Jake Paul when he was in Australia with KSI and how that all went down. I mean, there's a lot more people who are sort of religious followers of these identities than what we might actually suspect, Eddie.
Indeed, Alice. That these people have massive fan bases and they will turn out. We saw the scenes in Australia when, those KSI and Jake Paul pulled in massive crowds just hanging around to see them in TV studios. I mean, it's huge. The obvious question that then comes is this sort of any better than or any less scripted than pro wrestling? Because it's obvious that KSI and Jake Paul are going to fight. That was sort of what was hinted at after the fight. It's been in the works for a long, long time. Is all of this preordained, I guess? And it's sort of relevant because there were a lot of jokes flying around on social media earlier before the fight, with leaked scripts of the fight, and Tommy Fury is going to go down in the 6th round, and it's all a bit ridiculous. But I think there is some merit to the idea that at least part of this might be scripted entertainment.
Well, if they can pull in numbers like their current drink is making in the UK, the prime drink that people are killing each other to get in supermarkets, then they're going to do great things for the sport, that's for sure. Now, you mentioned some conspiratorial talk there, Eddie. Nothing gets me up and going like a good conspiracy. And we saw some stuff being leaked about this potential script. So is there any merit to this? I mean, seriously, Eddie, are we talking about this being a WWE style affair now?
No, I mean, I don't think we are, Alice. I'm not sure at that point. I didn't watch the full fight. I have seen some highlights. It looked like the two of them were going at it fairly and in the right spirit of things. So I'm not sure that there is really any merit to it. But it is one to think about, that there might be some aspect of scripting this on the fly, I think.
Well, you're a man that watches more sports than most. You know that in more recent years, umpires and referees are under more scrutiny than ever for being a little bit too imposing on a match that's got everyone interested and watching. So that has very much reared its head again in the aftermath of this fight, with the attention being all on the referee who supposedly stole the spotlight. What did you make of these allegations, Eddie, from fans?
Ellis, I know you for one will never miss an opportunity to have a little crack at a referee. So I'm not sure this would have been your
on and off the field, Eddie.
Way too much on for my liking. But yeah, the referee did feel the need to insert himself into this occasion. This is all for entertainment, isn't it? So whatever they're doing, they're trying to hype up the sport. And the referee clearly thought it was a good idea to insert himself. I haven't seen the footage. I don't know enough about boxing to know whether or not it was a legitimate entry. But we always do love seeing referees in the spotlight.
That's Eddie Dads from scplaybook.com.au. You've got 2 doses of Dads on the Arvo Flow Sports Hour, though, because we're going to check in with Eddie right after this break. We'll be talking AFL and NRL, so stay tuned. It's the Arvo Flow Sports Hour. Welcome back. You're listening to the Arvo Flow Sports Hour here on Flow FM, and I've got Eddie Dads from scplaybook.com.au on the line. Huge agenda for us to get through on this evening's edition of the show, and I've been talking about referees getting in the way of things with Eddie before we went to a break. Eddie, you'd have to say that even from an AFL lens, that it's the hardest time ever to be an official, isn't it?
Definitely. I mean, the amount of scrutiny we're seeing it, DRS coming into all sport. It's a very, very tricky time to be a referee. You've got to, you're going to have all of your decisions are going to be second guessed.
There we go. We'll move along and talk about the NRL, Eddie. A story out about Sonny Bill Williams, one of the most iconic league players of all time, of course. And this supposed feud which has lasted for a long time, this supposed grudge. It looks like it may be no longer, though, with Canterbury finally coming to the party and inviting Sonny Bill Williams to a training session. Yeah,
I mean, this is... in terms of the feud itself, this is sort of before my time with the NRL. I don't actually know what happened with Sonny Bill and Canterbury. It sounds like there was a big contract dispute. He went and tried to play overseas. Canterbury didn't like it. But the long story short of it is apparently the two parties haven't been on good terms for the last sort of 15 years. But it turns out that the new look Canterbury Bulldogs have managed to welcome him back into the fold. He's been taking training sessions, speaking to the boys. It sounds like Willie Mason and Andrew Ryan, the former players, have been instrumental in getting him back there. We haven't spoken about him actually at all on this show, but Gus Gould is one of the great sort of fixer-uppers in rugby league. He's done it with the Panthers, turned them into a dynasty. He's now the manager of football at the Canterbury Bulldogs. So it sounds like he's doing a fantastic job sort of putting the pieces in place to get everything together for this club. And I think they're sort of turning it around, Ellis. It's been a very slow process, but the Canterbury Bulldogs, they're going to be a force at some point, I reckon.
So what's your early read on this then, Eddie? Is this, just a sort of no-brainer PR move, or is there some sort of genuine, romantics that are behind it?
I genuinely think Sonny Bill Williams is one of the greatest football players of all time. He's done it in both codes. He's been a rugby league superstar, been a rugby union superstar. He's a freak athlete. I think it's just one of those things where the Bulldogs can recognise that they had this player who was so great, and they need to get him back in the fold, helping the young players of the team. I mean, you just look at him, Ellis. He's an absolute specimen. Still, I don't even know. He must be late 30s at this point. He still looks amazing. He still looks like he could run around in any league in the world. So he's a freak athlete. I'm glad that they have recognised that they may as well get him talking to the young kids and inspiring them and showing them how he does it.
Well, we'll leave rugby and go to AFL, and we've spoken about plenty of weird sports stories on this show over time, Eddie. But I think what sort of demonstrates that Australia is a unique sporting landscape the most is by the sheer fact that an AFL star can go to a local soccer match and get punched in the mouth. So what more do you know about this incident relating to the Tigers star Noah Bolter?
Oh, this is a really bizarre one. Apparently Noah was coaching a local soccer team in Melbourne on Sunday. I mean, that's weird enough to start with. And then apparently was punched in the mouth after a fight broke out during a soccer match, or a soccer match broke out during a fight, as we like to say about soccer over here. But yeah, unfortunately, Noah was struck in the mouth. Sounds like he's fine. He was helping to coach the team with Ivan Maric, who some of our Adelaide Crows fans and Richmond fans will recognise. Just a very, very strange story. Is this what all coaches in amateur soccer should expect?
Don't ever not expect it, Eddie. I would never want to square up with Maric, by the way. Just sensational stuff, really. And Melbourne, unfortunately, becoming a bit of an epicentre for violent soccer incidents, Eddie. Whilst we're speaking about the AFL, let's talk about some of these practice matches that were played over the weekend. We'll start with Port versus West Coast, this in WA on Friday evening. And I just want to speak about this game because you did say say that fans should be wary of Port? They might be flying under the radar in the AFL this season with not many people expecting a whole lot. With Ken Hinckley still in charge, there's a lot of people that don't really rate him and his coaching, but they're still a very good side on paper, irrespective of what you think of the coach, right, Eddie? So you wouldn't have thought they'd go down to West Coast, who probably had their worst season in good 2 decades in 2022.
So you booked your flights for the grand final already, Ellis?
You couldn't resist a jab there.
Yeah, I mean, this is quite concerning to me with my big Port call last week. It is just a practice match. There were some serious positives that came out of it as well for Port. Connor Rozee is just a freak. He's going to take a lot of people by surprise this year. He's turned into a fantastic sort of mid-forward player. I think people still think of him as like a high half forward, but he's actually moved into the midfield and is really damaging. Travis Boak he got bruised ribs, but there's no fracture, so that's also really good for Port. And I'm really excited to see what Jason Horne-Francis can do this year, Ellis. Obviously, kind of an interrupted start to his AFL career. I'm just an enormous fan of the guy. I think he's an incredible young footballer. I'll never forget watching him kick 5 goals in a preliminary final for South Adelaide as a 17-year-old. It's one of the most impressive junior performances I've seen. So, yeah, I think he's going to be great. I'm not that worried about Port, even though they lost to your terrible team.
We'll move along and just quickly mention Carlton and Collingwood now. As for Blues fans, I mean, come on, Eddie, they haven't won a flag since the early 90s. Surely by now they know not to start celebrating things too early. Is social media just having a little too much fun with Blues fans, or do you really think that they're being swept up in winning a practice match, because they should surely know better?
You would think they would know better, Ellis, but one thing about us footy fans, and I know as a Bombers fan, I'm convinced that every year is our year. So I'm not surprised that Carlton fans are taking this pretty seriously. I do really think, and this is another big call for you, Ellis, this might be Carlton's best team and best chance to make a wave in the finals for basically as long as the last 15, 20 years, I think. Their list is finally in a really, really good spot. They've picked up some really good role players over the off-season. Blake Acres was very underrated last year, went under the radar. He's a fantastic acquisition. I think that they've got their midfield that's just primed to take a leap into the really stratospheric part of the AFL. I think the likes of Sam Walsh, George Hewitt, Patrick Cripps, Matt Kennedy, they are all top-line midfielders, and I think Carlton are going to be really, really hard to beat here.
There we go. Well, so much to unpack on the show today. Eddie Dads from secplaybook.com.au. Always great to have a yarn with you. Enjoy coming back home, and we'll do it all again next week. Thanks, Eddie.
Sounds great,